Let's play some hockey.
You are watching Gouche Live. Hey, listen, what a great show we're going to have today. It is going to be outstanding. You know why? Because it's my 100th day anniversary. It's the 100th day of the show. Can you believe it? 100th day of isolation. It's not the 100th show. It's the 100th day in a row that I've been doing this show. I haven't missed one day. Obviously, it's Gouche Live featuring Paul Rosen. Paul will be back with us tomorrow. But I'm on 100th day. Oh my God, I can't believe it. And you know what? Got two very special guests for the first part, and then a really special guest on the second part. And you know what we're talking? We're talking hockey history. And you're going to learn a lot about hockey today, of course. And it's 24th day of me wearing a jersey. This is a jersey I wore at a big game in Belarus, playing against the Belarusian president Lukashenko. And everybody knows the story that I accidentally kissed him on both cheeks. And one day I'm going to tell the whole story. That's just part of the story. And I know that Paul and Kevin know nothing about the story specifically, but I will, hopefully we can find some video. I'm sure Paul Patskou, who's coming on the show, will find some videos in his archives. Listen, just before we bring up our two incredible guests, and I'll let you know who they are if you don't already know, Kevin and Paul, I'll let you know who they are in a second. I just want to say thank you for all the support we're getting from people from around the world, from Australia, New Zealand, Germany, of course, China now. We've got unbelievable amount of people coming in from China listening to our show. How the heck they're getting on Facebook is really, really surprising, because usually you can't. And all the way from Sioux Lookout, one of my best friends, Dick Davidson, who unfortunately lost to pancreatic cancer a few years back. His daughter Lori is on all the way from Sioux Lookout. So hi, Lori. I think you're on the wrong show. You're waiting for Tonic, which is with Tony right after me. And I know your husband's a big Boston Bruin fan. So I'll ask the two gentlemen that are coming up right away who their favorite Bruin is, just for your husband. All right, guys, listen, enough about me. Let's get to our guests. For the first part, we've got Kevin Shea, hockey historian. I think him and Liam McGuire would go toe-to-toe on trivia. And then we've got Paul Patskou. He's probably got the greatest archives of black and white video I've ever seen. And we've got some questions for him that may stump him, which I'm really excited about. So what's going to go on is I'm going to show them a couple pictures. They're going to guess who they are. They already know who they are because they're so smart. And then we've got some really exciting video that we're going to see that you don't rarely get to see. And so we really thank Kevin and Paul for doing this. They take time out of their busy schedule to educate us on hockey. So right after they are leaving the show, we'll say hello to Allan Stitt. And I'll tell you what, I think Kevin and Paul will admit that this is probably one of the best collections or best kept secret collections. He won't even tell us the address. And the reason is we don't want all those Leaf fans going over there. All right. We are so excited. Hang on. I want to hear the drum roll. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Kevin Shea, Paul Patskou.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having us on, Harry. This is great. And your milestone 100th show. There we go. Or
I had to pick you two.
100th day. There we go. So nice to be part of it as well.
Well, I had to pick you two.
You too.
Thrilled to be here, gentlemen.
Holy cow, listen to this. We've already started. Holy cow, 100 shows. Man, I've said it before, but now it's confirmed. You're better than awesome, hands down. I guess he's talking about you, Kevin. Is Kevin frozen? Is he so excited about being on the show?
Either that or his screen's frozen.
Happy anniversary. All right, guys. We are on 100th show. Let's get to it. Kevin, how you doing? How's your week been? I think we've lost Kevin. We'll go to Paul. Paul, how's your week been?
Oh, it's fine. Fine. If I remember what I did yesterday, I could tell you.
I'm having a tough time doing that too. I'll tell you what, it's been really exciting to be a part of this show, and then obviously getting you and Kevin. We're hoping Kevin can get back in. But thank you for doing this. Last time we did it, we had a lot of, you did it on your own the time before with Kevin. We've had a lot of interest from people saying, hey, when can you show some of those old pictures? And now getting these old archived videos is even just as exciting. Talk to us about how you got involved with this. Obviously, we can see that you're a Leafs fan, and we know that Kevin is a Leafs fan. But how did you get so wrapped up and so intelligent on the history of the game?
Well, it started when I was a young kid watching the Leafs play in the playoffs with my father, and I lost him a couple months later. And years later, I wanted to relive that moment, so I started looking for the old games, and everybody said they just didn't keep them. But I found them at National Archives in Ottawa, and because I knew something no one else knew, they all thought I was a genius. So from there, I started working with Molson's and CBC and NHL and everywhere else, and you accumulate footage and you find more, and it's the rare stuff that makes it exciting, and you can also correct history as well. And there's a lot of good reasons to have the video.
Absolutely. And Kevin, we lost you there for a second. I hope you're back in it. Do we have Kevin?
Here.
Where's back?
You're back. There you are, buddy. Sorry, a couple little technical issues. Robert Wine, do not blame us. It's got to be upstairs somewhere. Somebody taking advantage of our technical advancements. I just asked Paul, and I did not mention this to you before. We've had a lot of requests about those two old guys talking about hockey history, and here you are on the 100th Day Show.
They couldn't.
Not really. They didn't say old guys. They said those experts. So, Kevin, how did you get so well versed on the history of the game? I know, Paul, you mentioned obviously your father got you heavily involved with the Toronto Maple Leafs. We know both of you are huge Toronto Maple Leaf fans. So, Kevin, tell us how you got so excited about being involved and now are almost Mr. Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yeah, very much like Paul, as my father was key to the whole thing as well. So I grew up in Windsor, Ontario, where we only got the Leaf games, or at least Hockey Night in Canada games, on Saturday night. But I lived and died for our Toronto Maple Leafs at the time because my dad was a fan, and he brought the excitement to us as well. So we would all sit together as a family with my brother on one side and dad in the middle. We would have our dish of potato chips and our ginger ale, and we were ready to watch Hockey Night in Canada and follow our Maple Leafs. And I was a big fan from the get-go. So when the Leafs won those Stanley Cups in the early 60s, Dad would take us to the local train station because they had the Toronto newspapers there, and he would buy us the Telegram, the Daily Star, the Globe and Mail, so we could get even more pictures and even more background on the games that time. And it's just carried on from there. Read everything I can about specifically the Leafs, but about hockey, and watch it a ton as well, and been a season ticket holder since '85. So,
well, I know. Sorry, there was a little lag there, but I know that Val, our producer, who does a great job pulling up the pictures, is going to ask the question. Being in Windsor, why not a Detroit Red Wings fan?
The city is really divided that way. So when I grew up, the Red Wings weren't very good, but it goes much deeper than that.
Well, Kevin, they're still not very good.
But there was a period of time where they were a whole lot better than the Leafs at that point. But it's strange because when Detroit was playing in town at the time, at home, they would black out the Maple Leaf games on Saturday nights. So we held it against them at that time. We didn't like the Leaf or the Wings for that reason. So the city is almost evenly divided, half Red Wings, half Leafs, and very few intersect in the middle.
Well, guys, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Announcement coming out right now, breaking news. Next week, the greatest goalies of all time. I went through the archives, guys, and I found some pictures that are pretty remarkable. And you guys, of course, will know all the goaltenders. But we'll do goalies next week. But this week, we've got some extra special player pictures that we found, photos that we found in the archives. Bring up the first one, Al. Al's upset about the Detroit Red Wings comment.
Oh, I got to be so careful.
All right, so look at what he does right off the bat. He brings up a Detroit Red Wings picture. Paul, first you can comment on this picture, and then Kevin, please add to it. Wow, a little bit of hardware there for number 9, Gordie Howe.
Yeah, he could have a number of photos from different years with the same trophies. He seemed to win it all the time in the 50s. Kevin?
Kevin, are you all right? We lost Kevin again? Kevin can't hear us. All right, Paul, you continue on. We'll figure out what's going on with Kevin.
Okay. You want to put another one up or?
Okay, if you don't mind, while we get Kevin sorted out.
That's the trainer Joe Scroll in early 1969 season, giving the seat to Dave Keon. Now, the thing is, George Armstrong was the captain since 57, and he was kept retiring at the start of the year, 67, 68, 69, and 70. So I guess they figured they might as well give the seat to a sure thing because Army's going to do that every single year. We don't know if he's coming back. And so Army's still playing, and Keon's the captain from 69, 70, 70, 71, and on.
We really apologize, Paul, that we've having a little bit of issues with Kevin. We'll get that sorted out, of course. Going back, sorry, to the Dave Keon, I got to admit, from Winnipeg, I was a Toronto Maple. I was a hockey fan. I loved everything about hockey at the time, and I wasn't a Toronto Maple Leaf fan, and I wasn't a Montreal Canadian. Obviously, with the original 6, black and white, watching with my mom and dad. Mom was an avid Hawks fan for some reason. And I just loved all the stars like Frank Mahovlich, Norm Ullman, obviously Gordie Howe, Bobby Hull. And I'll tell you what, number 14 was always in my, I actually started playing hockey and my first original number was 14. And I don't know if that was an influence by Dave Keon. And I'll tell you what a great leader, what a great player. And of course, his straight stick.
Number one. But you know who's got great stories? Joe Scroll, the trainer there. He comes to our luncheons, and it's unbelievable. A lot of stuff you couldn't print or put in public, but he had the ear of the players and the management, being a trainer, just like Bobby Haggart did. He knows everything.
Kevin, are you there? Do we hear you?
I can hear you, Kerry. I just can't hear Paul, I'm afraid.
Okay, we're good. We're going to try and I'll stay on all the time and just direct the traffic then, guys. We apologize for what's going on there. So I'll stay and mediate, or what I'll do is I'll translate for you guys. So Paul just mentioned that Joe Scroll has obviously a lot of stories about what went on in the past with players. Because, you know, one of the things, Kevin, you can attest to this too, and I played pro hockey, so the one person that we confided in, it's like going for a haircut, which obviously you see I haven't done for a while, and talking with your hairstylist or the barber, and you tell everything, right? It's a tell-all situation in that chair. The trainer was the exact same for a hockey player. The trainer knew more about the player than the actual coach, management, or probably even the wives, because we confided everything in them, because they're the ones that are sharpening our skates, getting our sticks ready, making sure our equipment's ready, all that sort of stuff. And they took such good care of us that we confided in them. Obviously, Joe Scroll. Has he ever told you some cool stories?
Oh, absolutely. I interviewed him, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 months ago. Such a great guy, such a character. So he's a Timmins boy. And we heard about the emergency backup goaltender when David Ayres played this past year against Leafs, playing for Carolina. And so Joe had actually taken that role himself back in the days before the NHL teams carried 2 goalies, before most teams carried 2 goalies. So he had done that. He'd played junior with Guelph, hang on here. Got Howie Morin's up there now. There we go. And then he played in Nashville. And then he joined the Leafs organization with Tulsa. And that's where he kind of got in. And then in August of 68, he got a call out of the blue. And Harold Ballard said, "Can you come meet me at 10 o'clock the next morning?" And Joe said, "Sure." Didn't know if he was getting fired. Didn't know what was going on. Ballard offered him the job. Scrow said yes. Didn't ask about money. Didn't ask anything. He started the following Monday, and he went on to be he became the head trainer of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and talked about the finest guys he dealt with. And they were George Armstrong and Dave Keon, who we see in this picture. And
Yeah.
Armstrong preceded Keon as the captain of the team as well.
Well, it's really ironic. Allan Stitt, who's coming up right after the show, stated that he was actually, that was Armstrong's original jersey.
Wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they do all kinds of things to get ready for the game at that particular time, but just great photo opportunity, if nothing else. And there's Dave Keon becoming captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
So, Paul, are you hearing Kevin?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Paul.
I hear Paul now.
Kevin can't hear you, but that's okay. So
yes.
Go to the next picture.
I can hear Paul, by the way, now. So.
Okay, great. Look at this, guys. What a great shot. Paul, you go first.
Okay,
Obviously,
I would think this is a 52-53. Billy Ray retired. Billy Ray's on the left-hand side. Kenny Mosdell is on the other side of the Rocket. So obviously it's 52-53 and before that. So it looked like they're celebrating something. So I would think maybe it's well, they won the Cup in 53. So I think that's what it could be. Kevin?
Yeah, tough to say, but you're absolutely right. Billy Ray retired that year, and Mosdell had come over, a little while before, but had come over from the Brooklyn Americans, but just a great dressing room shot of the Rocket with two of his teammates at that time. Wonderful, wonderful shot. Yeah, we mentioned that Mosdell played with the Brooklyn Americans, a team that their demise started the original Six era. So the 1941-42 season, they became the Brooklyn Americans. Mosdell was part of the team, and when they folded, or at least they were put on permanent hiatus, as it were, then it began the original Six era, which certainly we have glorified through the years.
well, look at we've got on the screen right now the Morantz Memorial. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but what's really cool is, Paul, you pulled out of the archives some pretty cool video.
Yeah, you wouldn't think there'd be footage of the actual game back then, even with play-by-play. And it's quite remarkable because you're going to see all the big stars, Eddie Shore, Charlie Conacher, they're all in that one game. And Howie Murns Jr., who we got to know later, he's actually sitting on the bench as a young kid watching this game.
Well, you know what, Paul? John Cavers is on. And the last time we had Johnny on, he's going to actually say he was at this game.
Oh, he was at this game too.
I think he was in row 6. Now, I know it's really dark, but look at that.
Well,
That's
it's a game sound with play-by-play if you wanted to put that on, but
yeah, the unfortunate part, the program
9
doesn't allow us.
It's a goal.
So this was kind of an interesting scenario where it was the Montreal Maroons and the Montreal Canadiens against the rest of the league all-stars, and so that's where we see such great action here at some of the greats of the game too. Just a terrific time to raise some money to hand over to Howie Murns' widow and her children.
Now, as we go through these videos, we had Joe Patskou on from CKND Winnipeg, and he's now living in Toronto. He was working with you guys at the Hockey Hall of Fame, and he got permission to show a couple of videos. I asked Allan Stitt that. Did you know that back in the late 30s that the penalty shot was not, he didn't skate in on the goalie. He actually took the shot from a face-off dot like 20 feet away from the goalie.
Well, there was a minor penalty shot, and then there was a major penalty shot. So the minor penalty shot was where you took the shot from just in front of the goalie and tried to score from there.
Okay.
Yeah, you had the circle, and I can show film of that. There's one game, I think New York Americans, where they took a penalty shot, the fellow from the circle, and it was the only goal of the game. They won that game with that. So it's kind of unique.
Yeah, unbelievable. All right, so we've got another video here we'd like to show you. Obviously, Paul and Kevin comment as it goes on.
We're going to go back to 1934. The other was 1937. This is the actual Ace Bailey benefit game, and Howie Murns is actually playing in this game. So you've got all the greats there, and Maple Leaf Gardens, of course, and you're going to see Ace Bailey out there. Well, there's the sweaters. Any of those still exist?
Yeah, there's one in the Hockey Hall of Fame for sure, but yeah, just I guess we regard it as the first All-Star game, and it was the Leafs playing against a collection of the All-Star members from the various teams at the time too, to raise money after Ace Bailey had been unfortunately hurt and ended his career in
You see,
December 33.
H was right there at center ice. Sorry, there he is. Yeah.
Johnny's just letting it know he was at this game also. He was in row 7.
He actually started up way higher, but he bribed one of the ushers to get down low. So.
All right, so tell us a little bit about this time. How do you get film like this? Like, obviously, it's something that is not normally and readily available. So is it only at the Hockey Hall of Fame, or do you guys have other archives that you can draw upon?
There's a fellow named Bill Galloway who worked at the National Archives for many years. He was like their archivist, and he searched everywhere for footage. And when he passed away, the Hall of Fame had inherited all that film, and which is a good thing too, because otherwise it would be lost.
Yeah, I think we talked about it once before. We're losing Kevin again. Oh, there he's back. We talked before about 1972 where we lost some film footage, I think, to Hee-Haw. So I'm sure there is a lot of film that's gone missing, but that we can pull it up here, Paul, because of you and Kevin. Thank you so much. It's absolutely incredible. Here's another. You know what? I think you guys know I do an event over in Australia, and we had a little bit of a problem with the Zamboni. It went through the floor, so we had to reinvent a Zamboni, much smaller and on this golf cart type concept. One day I'll show in the Hockey Hall of Fame because it's absolutely incredible. It's too bad we didn't have these brooms. Watch this, back in 1937, I think. Tell us about this, Paul.
Well, this is Chicago Stadium. The interesting is the Chicago Shamrocks are playing. And John remembers those too, probably. And this fella, I don't know what he earned for sweeping the ice, but he had a good time doing it.
Now, is this actually, Kevin, is this the Zamboni?
Well, it was the equivalent of the Zamboni at the time, for sure, which is they had to clear the snow from the ice. So this is what they did. You know, it started that way and went into dragging water barrels behind them to resurface the ice, and ultimately got to the Zambonis as well.
Well, I played in a little town called Morden, Manitoba as a kid, and I can remember them getting the shovels, and all of a sudden out came a cow with the barrel, and this cow walked around the ice distributing the water. So that's a step up, having brooms like that. All right, what do we got up next? Paul, I think we've got a couple more videos of yours that obviously a lot of people have never seen before. And we can't thank you enough for being able to bring us that. And of course, right after you guys, we got Allan Stitt coming up, which is really cool because Allan's got some, and you both know Allan very well. We're going to talk a little bit about his books, but more importantly, his collection, which is just in itself a Hockey Hall of Fame. So let's see some of those pictures that you've sent us. Bell's slowing down. There it is. Look at this. Before we see the video on this, which you've sent, Paul, explain what we see here.
I haven't seen the video, but this is a famous photo of Pete Langell, number 8. He actually scores the winning goal. Now, some people say, well, it can't be the final game, Game 7, when they win the Stanley Cup. There's no goalie in the Detroit net. Nobody can see him. They see a number of players, but they don't know where he is. But anyways, it's definitely Pete Langell scoring. And you're going to see with the video that's recently uncovered, and you're going to see what happened to the goalie in this particular instance.
So what do you mean recently discovered? So the video you found somewhere?
Yes, fairly recently.
Okay. So this is what we're going to see now is that from that photo, we can actually see what went on in the photo.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Let's see it.
What's the goalie?
Oh.
He's taken out by his own player.
Yeah, and there you go. So that's actually proof positive that that picture is the winning goal.
So how much time would you spend a week, Paul, going through old film footages, trying to match it up with pictures? I know that I've had the opportunity to go and see Allan at his office, and he actually has done that. He's got a jersey, and then somebody would say, was that the original jersey? And then he would find a picture that matches that up. How many hours a week would it take for you to do this?
On the demand. Like, for instance, someone had a Brian Glennie shirt from 68, 69. So the one real way of seeing if it's authentic is he was Brian Glennie's interview between periods, and the camera zeroes right in on it. And you know it's that game. You can't go wrong. Ultimately, that sweater probably wasn't Brian Glennie's that he was testing. But yeah, I have a lot of footage that you can actually, that helps identify, game-worn sweaters.
Well, Kevin, I know you do a lot at the Hockey Hall of Fame, and I saw Allan show me one time, he showed the jersey and had maybe a mark from a stick or a puck or, maybe something opened up. Is that how you guys do that at the hockey? Because you've got a whole archives of stuff that's not actually in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Obviously, they can't put everything there. Is that how you research and find out what year it's from, what player it's from?
Yeah, it's really important to find what's called the provenance of the artifact, the jersey, the stick, whatever it happens to be. And so if you can photo match it with some action shots, whether they're supplied by Paul with some great video, or whether they're photos that are in the archives at the Hockey Hall of Fame, trying to match it. Maybe you'll find a hole in the sweater and you're able to match it, or a blood stain or something of that ilk. So you can photo match the artifact to the actual game or season, if at the very least, and go from there. So that's a really important part of the Hockey Hall of Fame's role.
Well, we can't agree more with John Caver saying Kevin and Paul should get the Order of Canada for their work.
An interesting story is the Barocco puck, Kevin? If we see the footage of the 51, I'll show you the fellow that's going across the ice to pick up the puck.
All right, let's see what we just hit.
Yeah, let it run. At the bottom of the screen, this guy's going to go quickly across the other way. Oh, it went too quickly. But anyways, yeah, that's a story for another day.
All right. We look forward to it. Yeah, you know what? We'd love to hear the whole Barilka story because it's fascinating. I only got to read part of the book. I'm not the greatest reader. I kind of fell asleep. But it'd be really cool to hear it from your guys' standpoint of what actually went on, because there are some, obviously there's a song that's been written about it. Of course, there's archives on it, but it'd be really cool to hear from you guys because I know both of you have done extensive research on it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, actually. It's a program unto itself.
All right, so we'll leave that one.
Shea McKenzie took this footage, and I didn't even know it existed until I checked the game film, and he did keep rolling the cameras, and a lot of interesting shots in here. That famous photo of Barocco being hoisted up, you'll see that, and you see the flash as well. So we could do a whole show on this, that's for sure.
Yeah, let's do that. Barocco is a very, very interesting story. So I'd love to do that. Next week, don't forget, we're doing goalie greats. That's going to be exciting. Paul, I don't know if you could pull out some video of some of the great goalies. Johnny Bauer, of course. And you know what? You two, the three of us will pick the all-time greatest goaltenders. We'll do our top 10.
Okay. Yeah, I can find video of Joe Scroll too with Nashville if you want to see that.
Absolutely, that'd be fantastic. All right, Kevin. So tell us what your daily right now. Obviously, we're in a pandemic. We're not doing a lot. What's your daily like? Are you still fully entrenched in hockey history, or is your life more than just obviously looking at old pictures and video from the days gone by?
Well, right at this particular time, so there's three things going on right now. So I just finished a book about Corey Hirsch, who played in the National Hockey League for the Rangers, more with the Vancouver Canucks, a few other teams as well, but who had mental health challenges that derailed his career. So I just finished that book, which was a fascinating research study. Working on another book about the Toronto Maple Leafs and the passion that Leafs have for the team. But the Hall of Fame commitment is a number of different things, going over old photos, writing biographies, updating, parts of the website, things of that sort. So always involved. It's always hockey all the time, and I'm the happiest guy around.
Paul, your daily routine.
Well, lately I'm going to show you a book.
Everybody's written a book.
Shameless plug. The revised version is coming out in a few months.
Well done, Paul. Well done.
And there's going to be a lot of interesting news stories there.
Okay, hang on a sec.
On them. So,
Paul.
Yep.
What happens if you're a Jets fan? I'm not going to read that.
Why not? Why don't you do one on 100 things a Jets fan should know?
He could only come up with 3, though. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Hey, come on. I saw them win the AFCO Cup, so don't
There you
forget
go.
that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, before I let you guys go, yesterday, I travel a lot, so I was not here for the Raptors win. And yesterday, I guess, was the anniversary, and they had it on TV all over the place. That's 3 too many. That's Val, watch what you're saying. We'll not show any more Detroit Red Wing pictures. But I watched the video of all, the Raptors win, and they got them up, at downtown at the Toronto Square and all that sort of. Could you just imagine, you two, because I don't think you guys remember specifically the Stanley Cup win. Do you actually remember it?
I do.
I remember
We're
all
old guys,
4
remember?
well.
But you're a lot older than me because I don't remember it, to be honest with you. And I would have been, 60, so I was born 59, so I would have been old enough, but I don't remember it because I wasn't here. So you're here. Could you imagine, just tell us really quickly before we bring Allan up, what it would be like. Now, the Raptors was fantastic, but could you imagine the impact the Toronto Maple Leafs hoisting the Stanley Cup downtown like the Raptors did? Would it be bigger?
Well, if the COVID-19 pandemic was over, then I would think that would be the greatest celebration the city's ever seen, more than the Queen visiting the previous ones as well. It just, 54 years is a phenomenal length of time for people to wait. And the anxiety is built up every year. And we've taken the slings and arrows of every franchise who have taunted us all that time as well. So for the Leafs to win the Stanley Cup, and with the Leaf Nation being as strong as it is, I suspect this city would just explode in celebration.
So there's a picture of the Raptors celebration. And as you say, it's not Raptors took it by storm, no question, but the history of the Maple Leafs all throughout, not only Canada, but as you know, anywhere you go across North America, across the world, it would just be absolutely breathtaking. Paul, final word on that?
On the parade? Well,
Yeah,
I agree everything Kevin says. There's no question about it. It'll surpass I don't know if it'll surpass the Raptors. That was pretty big, but maybe this one will be more organized and it'll be same amount of people, but in a better space.
So as we let you go here, Paul, are your books, can you pre-order them online?
Well, thanks, Todd.
Yeah, that's good. You too, Kevin. Please send us for next show. Send me where people can buy your book. We've got some great comments here, of course, played briefly with the Jets. All right, look at this one. Hey, Paul, great. I hope you're doing a Peter Anichek book.
I would do Miroslav. That'll be the next one, okay?
Yeah, I know. Shoppy's our European correspondent. As you know, everything goes through Crayfeld, and Peter was a star there. Kevin, Todd's saying yours a must read. And of course, a slap at Paul, at Val. We need more Red Wings media from Val. All right, guys, I can't. We'll do that next. No, we're not doing it next week. We're going to do goalies next week, and we're going to do top 10 goaltenders of all times. I need you guys. Of course, Paul Val has to throw that up at us. We'll talk about the goaltenders, the top 10 of all time. So get your list ready, and we'll go from 10 to 1, and we'll see how close we are. And you guys being much older, what the heck is that? Val is throwing it all out at us. All right, guys. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules. Please get back to the archives. Please make sure we put on a great show next week with all the top goaltenders. Looking forward to seeing all the video you can scratch up there, Mr. Paul. Thanks, Kev. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much, guys.
Hang on a sec. You want to say hello to our buddy Allan? Allan Stitt, how are you?
Hi, guys. How are you?
Hello, Allan.
Fine.
Hey, Gouche.
Allan, are these not two of the best researchers you've ever met?
Unbelievable. Their knowledge is absolutely incredible. Always has been. They're just very, very impressive guys who write great books.
And you know what's really cool about it is that players play, coaches coach, referees referee, goalies like Val let a lot of pucks in. A lot of people don't know the behind the scenes, right? Here we are getting film footage from the 30s and 40s and 50s, stuff that I've never seen, and I'm 60. I've been along the game for a long time. How cool is that to have people dedicated, not only like these two, but yourself, Allan, to keeping it alive?
It's amazing. One of the I saw the footage that Paul you had from the first All-Star game, and one of the things I love from those videos of the early 30s is how when the team rushes up the ice, the defensemen stop at their own blue line and chat with each other while the play is going into the offensive zone and wait there until the play comes back. It's absolutely hilarious.
I should show that next time. And Allan has this All-Star game film, which I can't show. He can if he wanted to, and he can talk about that whenever he wants to.
Hey, listen, you just described the Detroit Red Wings of this year.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, guys. Hey, Kevin, Paul, thank you. Oh, there comes Val again. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Val, for pulling up all that stuff. Look forward to next week. Mark it on your calendars. The all-time greatest goaltenders. We're going to also, in that, we're going to also pull out some of the great masks of all times, because there's some winners.
Good.
Thank you, guys.
All right, guys.
Thank
you.
you for everything you do
Bye.
as well.
Thanks, buddy. Wow. You know what? It's interesting to be able to meet guys like that. Eh? Kevin, obviously, through the Hockey Hall of Fame, and Paul through some of the celebrity games that we played, and just to get to know them and know how passionate they are about the sport I love, and I love to play, but I didn't really know the history. And this is why this has been really interesting. And of course, meeting you, Allan, and having the opportunity to see your collection, which we're going to have. Don't give out the address. We don't want anybody to know where you are. It's a mini Hall of Fame.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. You know, the hockey does have such a fantastic history, and there are so many great books out there from the Stephen Harper did the really early one, and hockey in Toronto before the NHA, and then all the books about the early part of the NHA, the NHL. It's just such a fascinating history.
Yeah. So I know what we're going to do today is walk through some of the history that you have collected. But before we do that, how did you get so you write books about it? You collect. Why? Tell us how you got this passion. You played a little bit. Tell us how you got so involved and engaged in it.
Well, I've always been passionate about hockey. I've always loved hockey. But the way I got into collecting, actually, many years ago, I saw at an American auction, there was a stick that they said Paul Henderson had used in the 72 Summit Series. And I thought, how could that possibly come up in an American auction? Americans aren't going to know what that's worth. I should see if I could buy it. And I ended up bidding at the auction and buying it. And of course, blindly having no idea at that point that you needed to check provenance and figure out that it was real or anything like that. And it turns out I had to do all my research afterwards, and I did find out it was real. But that got me started. So I then went to the memorabilia show that was in town, and I remember going up to a booth, and people were selling hockey cards, which I know a lot of people collect in most of the booths. But there was one vendor who was selling some original NHL contracts, and I remember the first one I saw. There was an original Teeter Kennedy contract, and the booth beside it had his card, one of Teeter Kennedy's cards, and it was selling for $100, and the contract was selling for $300. And I thought, I have no idea what these things are worth, but the original contract that Teeter Kennedy signed to play for the Toronto Maple Leafs has to be worth more than 3 times what the card is selling for. So I bought the contract, and that got me started in contracts and documents, and went from there.
So I got an opportunity to see some of those contracts, and it's amazing. If you don't mind just sharing a couple stories about the contracts. We should have actually had you send some, what you can obviously state about these contracts, but they had to hand their jersey in. In those days there were knit jerseys, and they had to return it, made sure that it was properly in good standings. Tell us some of the quirky things that you saw in those contracts that obviously today we wouldn't see.
Yeah, there were clauses in those early contracts that said the players will be given one jersey, and then they have to return it at the end of the season, give it back to the team. And then, of course, they recycled those jerseys, one of the reasons why so few of them survived. There are other great clauses to it. In the old days, it started out where the team it said that the player has an obligation to play for the team, but if the team doesn't like the way that the player is playing, they can give them 1 day's notice and a ticket back to their hometown, and that's it. The contract is at an end. And then it's kind of fun in 1939, a new clause gets added that says, in case play is stopped because of a war, the owners don't have any obligations to the players. And of course, that was because the Second World War was starting in 39. And then you can see through the years that clause evolves and becomes the clause that deals with all work stoppages in hockey, including labor stoppages. That clause that all the players have in their contracts around labor stoppages actually originated from that 1939 clause where they had, in case play is stopped because of the war.
Now, you obviously have a legal background, of course, and understand the importance of contracts. So as you were mentioning, there's one popping up. I don't know where Val pulled that out of, but when you're talking about these stoppages, would you have believed that there's anything at all about a pandemic?
Boy, I mean, obviously there was the stoppage in 1919 when Montreal and Seattle were playing for the Stanley Cup, and there was the pandemic then that didn't allow there to be a Stanley Cup winner back in 1919. But we certainly, obviously, thought we were beyond that, and there would never be this kind of stoppage. It's a crazy world.
It's unbelievable. So up here is Teddy Kennedy's contract. What could you tell us about this?
Teeter Kennedy first came up in 43. I don't think this is. It's hard for me to see up close. No, it's not.
It is, yeah.
It's a later. This is a later contract. And in 43, he was being paid, I believe, $100 a game. And then you can see through the years how he's able to get paid more and more as he becomes more and more important, becomes captain of the team, of course. Then he retires, and then they talk him out of his retirement and ask him to come back, and he has another contract after he retires. But for me, what's so amazing about these contracts is you actually see what the players were reading and what they had to deal with. You can see there Clarence Campbell has signed at the top right. That's Clarence Campbell's signature because the league president signed all the contracts. And then at the bottom right, there's Teeter. There's it's hard to see. I think it's hard to see up close, but Teeter Kennedy.
That's incredible.
There, and I can't see who the other signature is. I'd have to look closer. It might be Half Day. Yeah, it's Half Day. Half Day signed on behalf of the team, and Teeter Kennedy, who's signing there, is Theodore Kennedy.
Yeah. So now what's really super cool about this is that the average person is not going to really care, right? They don't, wow. But the people that are really passionate about this, to actually see these type of contracts, obviously I played pro hockey and I had an agent, everybody signs the contracts and they're just forgotten. You put them on the shelf. They only become valid when there's a dispute.
Yeah.
So that's really cool to be able to go back in history. And I know you're so great at doing this sort of stuff. We've got an Australian on that's saying, wow, that's super cool. And he wouldn't even know the first thing about the contract. And of course, Kevin Shea, a phenomenal resource. He believes you are. Allan, it is great that we can't forget where we came from. Obviously, the game has changed. But here we are in 1919. The game was stopped by a pandemic. And here we are today. The game has been stopped by a pandemic. So it's unbelievable to think that we've almost come full circle.
Crazy stuff.
Allan, you're instrumental and beyond generous in providing info for my Jacques Plante bio, a true gentleman.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate that. Todd is another terrific writer. He'd be a great guest on the show.
Yeah, we got to get absolutely. Listen, the idea of this show when we first started out was to talk hockey, and what a great opportunity to not only talk about NHL but also the history of the game and of course history of the game all around the world. Where you and I, and I'm still looking for the picture. You and I met in New Zealand. Do not forget, where I was on a tour about it. And here's one of the jerseys that were involved. Obviously, this one was for one of the tours we did in Belarus, actually. But talk to us about the jersey you've got on, because that is a pretty funky looking jersey.
I will in just a sec. I just wanted to show you if people are interested. This is
absolutely
this book. This is written in blue and white, and this is a book about the Maple Leaf documents that I have. It doesn't say on it, but for those of you who have it, you'll know there's a little pouch in the back, and there's a perfect copy of Teeter Kennedy's rookie contract that you can go through in great detail. But Greg Oliver's the author. Lots of stories about the different documents and the players. And then this book is Blue Lines, Gold Lines, Bottom Lines. It's also about documents, but not Leaf documents. So other documents, including things like the contract that Wayne Gretzky signed at center ice on his 18th birthday to become an Edmonton Oiler for life. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, but that was the idea.
So, Allan, because you have a legal background, is that why you're so interested in the contracts, or was it as a collector? Wow, that's kind of cool. I'd love to have that. Have it in my possession.
Yeah, combination. First of all, I think the legal background helps, but it's not really the legal background. I just find it fascinating that you can read their contracts and see what they actually signed for, and the terms, some of the terms that they had to agree to are hilarious.
Well, we've got an Australian asking, where can I get the book? So I know him personally. We'll figure that one out. That's really cool.
Yeah, most of the online vendors sell them usually.
There you go. There it is, Todd. Todd, it's fantastic. Look at that. I feel like I'm an eBay supplier or something like that.
Now this particular.
Sorry, let me just ask you a question about before you go on the jersey. It's phenomenal. Talk to me about the books. How long does it take? You know, I've written a book, but it was in crayon. How long did it take you to actually write those books? Because you've got to do a lot of research. You've got to go and find the copyrights, of course, and you've got to get people to allow you to use the pictures, and then you need somebody to write it. Or did you actually write the book? Tell us a little bit about, before we go into the jersey, tell us about the process of getting those books put together, and how long does an average book take to do?
Yeah, I didn't write the books. Greg Oliver is the author who wrote the books, and he did all of the research and talked to the players who were mentioned in the documents. It took probably about 2 years from start to finish, and from the idea to the time when we said, yes, we're going to do this, to the time when we ended up with a book that we could actually hold in our hands. We had to, but you're right. There's a lot of work involved in obtaining permissions and those sorts of things. It's always more work than people think.
Yeah, absolutely. And getting an editor to take out all the dots that are written in it. Listen, talk to us about the jersey now. It is phenomenal.
Yeah, we're going to go through and I'll show some of the Team Canada jerseys from the collection. Yeah. This particular one is just a style. That's the front of the sweater. That's the Lanny McDonald. The one I'm wearing is Jill Melosh's sweater these are from the I believe from the '82 World Championships. And I've always thought there are so many, and we'll see some more of them. There's so many great old styles of sweaters. And when we're looking at when Team Canada is looking to do a new style, they always do something. They try to do something new. I think some of these retro styles are gorgeous, and people would love it if they went back to a style like this.
So, and all the jerseys that you're going to show, obviously, are in cases for a reason to protect them. Are these all game-worn jerseys, or are these replicas? They're
all game-worn. So the one I'm wearing is not in a case to protect it, but that's because I'm wearing a Jill Melosh's jersey. So
that is incredible.
I'm wearing it because it's one of my favorite styles.
It is. It's beautiful. And I know Val was mentioning the brightness of the red. It's so deep, and versus some of the other ones that we've had throughout the course of history. All right, Val's going to be bringing some jerseys up here. What's next? Look at that.
That's the '68 Olympics. Danny O'Shea is the player, and I mean, it looks very '60s, of course, but again, it's really a nice, simple style of sweater. This one just has the one maple leaf as opposed to the one I'm wearing, or the Lanny McDonald one we saw a second ago, which had the 5 leaves. But I really like the simplicity of the style. It does look very '60s. It looks old, but it's quite nice.
Yeah, it's very, very nice.
Yeah.
How many? We'll go through some more here. How many Team Canada jerseys do you have in your archive?
Quite a lot.
More than 10?
More than 10. Yeah.
All right. What's this all about? The Sudbury Wolves.
Yeah. So in the days before the pros were playing for Team Canada in the World Championships and the Olympics, they used to send the junior teams over to play in the World Championships. And this is of all the sweaters that I own. And by the way, I know pretty well everyone calls them jerseys. I remember many years ago I was calling them jerseys, and I was corrected by someone who said, no, baseball jerseys, but it's hockey sweaters from back in the day when they actually wore sweaters. So I can't help it. I now seem to keep calling them sweaters. So this particular sweater was worn by a player called Percy Allan of the Sudbury Wolves when they went to the World Championships in 1938. You can see that the cuffs are nicely designed with different colors and are tight. And it's they were still the Sudbury Wolves, you could see, but then they just added the maple leaf and the Canada to show that they represented Canada. Very, very simple jerseys, but it could have just as easily been an actual sweater that people wore out in the evening, but it was what they wore to play hockey.
Is it wool knit?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Unbelievable. Just imagine that getting wet.
Oh, terrible.
Hey, look at this.
Yeah,
the Dunlops.
This is Bill Addersley, I think. Again, when they were sending junior teams, this is the Whitby Dunlops. And this, what they would do here is Whitby Dunlops just had their regular sweater, and you can see on the back they would just add Canada when they sent them over for the World Championships. I suspect they added those Leafs also. I don't know if the Paul and Kevin would probably know, but I don't know if the Leafs were part of the Whitby Dunlops sweater or whether they just added them when they went to the World Championships. But you could see it wasn't a big deal to get a new sweater. They would just take their regular sweater and put Canada on the back, and then off they go to play in the World Championships.
Wow. Look at the ones in the background too. We see, okay, Belleville McFarland's.
Belleville McFarland's. This one's actually Red Berenson's sweater, who had a long and great career in the NHL. 6 goals in a game, one game, I believe. But interesting to see the Belleville McFarland's is sort of a reddish tone, and in those days, sometimes the Canada and the Leaf were being done in blue. I can look it up to see what year this is.
Now, why in blue? Because I know there's a jersey coming up here too that's really exciting. I bet you a lot of people have never seen it or even knew that Canada wore a blue jersey. Why the blue? Where did it come from?
I don't know. This was 59, and it seemed that around then, the late 50s, early 60s, they liked to use the blue leaf. I have no idea why. And I know I've heard some people say, "Oh, it looks funny. It doesn't look right. It doesn't look good." I just find it beautiful. I think it really looks
remarkable. It is a good-looking jersey. It would have been nice that the black was blue too, right? And they kind of matched it up a little bit. But it's
it may
nice.
have been that was their Belleville McFarland's sweater, and then they just added. When they went to the World Championships. I don't know.
Okay, this one's really cool.
Yeah, so this is a Billy Daw sweater from the 1952 Olympics. So not just World Championships, but also Olympics. The Canada used to send a team like the Edmonton Mercury's, and this was their regular Edmonton Mercury's sweater again, but they would just revise it to make it a Team Canada sweater. And that was, of course, the last amateur Canadian team to win the Olympic gold medal in 1952. And we had a 50-year drought until the pros won it in 2002 in Salt Lake City.
That's right. That's incredible. And these are this one fascinates me.
Yeah. Now this was there were a couple of years where they used these blue sweaters for both the World Juniors and the World Championships. This particular one is Craig Hartsburg from the 79 World Juniors. And that was the one that Wayne Gretzky played in. I
don't recall this jersey at all.
Well, if you see pictures of Gretzky in the World Juniors, that's the sweater he's wearing. They wore this blue sweater just for 1 or 2 years, and I find it quite interesting. They were starting to go to the Doreen style around then, the Doreen material, away from the wool, it looks quite nice in Doreen, and it's a kind of a funky blue.
Golly, that is an incredible jersey. All right, Val, we're moving on to there it is.
Well, yeah, that's of course from the '76 Canada Cup. That one's Bobby Orr's sweater. And the players in the Canada Cup had 2 of the reds and 2 of the whites that they wore throughout the Canada Cup. The idea was originally that they would wear 1 set for the pre-tournament games and then wear a clean set when the tournament started. But of course, in those days, they weren't as careful as they are now about doing that sort of thing. And some of the one was worn in one and one was worn in the other. So it's not as clear cut as you might think. And it's actually quite a funny story of what happened to Bobby Orr's other red sweater. When Terry Fox was doing his run across Canada and he went to Parry Sound, Parry Sound where Bobby Orr is from. Bobby Orr's father was there, and Terry Fox's dad asked Bobby Orr's dad if he would give him one of Bobby's jerseys, one of Bobby's sweaters, for the Terry Fox Museum. And Bobby says that his dad went and just grabbed a sweater, and the sweater he happened to grab was his 76 game-worn Canada Cup sweater. And so that's now in the Terry Fox Museum. And Bobby says, he could have grabbed any sweater. Didn't have to get probably the most iconic sweater that he ever wore for Team Canada. But
is it still there?
Oh yeah, it's still there.
That's incredible. Now, how many games did Orr play then?
Well, that was the 76 Canada Cup. He played all of the games. He was the MVP, and that was really his swan song. After that, he of course just played a few more games for the Chicago Blackhawks, but he was really done. That was it. 76. That was the last time that you really saw Bobby Orr be a superstar, and he was the MVP of that series, and then he was done. It was, it's sort of like a shooting star. I think Don Cherry said he was like a shooting star. He's there, it's amazing, and then he's gone. He played for such a short period of time.
Well, then, obviously we see the 1972 jersey. Just before we talk about that, he was scheduled to play in the 72 series, but his knees were so bad he couldn't.
That's right.
Didn't the Russians want to make provisions for him to play?
He did come to the training camp for Team Canada 72. So some of the items and he was on the team. So there are some items that he's signed for Team Canada 72. My understanding is he doesn't like to sign anything related to Team Canada 72 now because he feels like it takes away from the players who actually played in the games. But he was definitely supposed to be part of the team. Yeah,
and here's one of the all-time greatest. Obviously, we see that picture where Paul Henderson has just finished scoring the goal. Talk about this jersey, Yvon Cornway.
Yeah, so that famous picture of Paul Henderson scoring the goal, Cornway is actually wearing this sweater.
There it is.
So you can see the photo. So the sweater that Cornway is wearing while hugging Paul Henderson, that's the sweater that you just saw. And as you can see, it's very short, a lot shorter than Paul's, for example. And Yvon actually told me that he used to get his sweaters, and the trainer knew that whenever he got a new sweater, he would give him a pair of scissors. And Yvon would just cut the sleeves and cut the bottom of the sweater to make it. He wasn't a tall guy, the Roadrunner. He would cut them and make it really short. And he really cut this one down a lot, made it very short. But it's obviously an iconic sweater, not as iconic as the Paul Henderson one, but maybe next. He had a fantastic series too, Cornway. He was great.
He was amazing, absolutely amazing. All right, that's a classic.
Yeah, you can see the cut marks there at the bottom.
Look at this one. This is classic.
Yeah, I love this style. Team Canada had this style at the World Championships for 3 years, 77, 78, 79. And in 77, of course, that was when our good friend Ron Ellis played on the Team Canada.
That's right.
They started out with the Doreen material, and then they went to this material. This one's either 78 or 79. I'm not sure, the Dale McCord. I think it might be 79, where it was the material that has little holes in it that allows it to breathe a bit more than the Doreen. But it's so 1970s. It's unbelievable. I mean, anyone who didn't know anything about hockey or anything but knew the 1970s would see this and say, oh, yes, of course, that's from the 1970s. But just a really crazy, colorful, funky style that seems to have been lost to history, unfortunately. And it's kind of fun to see it again because it's kind of cool.
Hey, the only cooler thing about that is if that green was in blue, then it would tie it back into history.
That's
Wow,
right.
that's fantastic. How many jerseys do you have in your collection, do you think?
A lot.
Like over 100?
I do, yeah.
Good for you.
Too many.
But you just don't have jerseys, because I've been to your office and you've got sticks and all different type of artifacts. It's a phenomenal collection.
Yeah.
All right, RCAF, the Bombers.
Yeah, so that RCAF is Royal Canadian Air Force. This was a sweater, and this again back to the wool, that Blackjack Stewart, who's an honored member of the Hockey Hall of Fame, that he wore when he played for the Air Force during the war, because of course a lot of the players went to fight in the war, even though they would have otherwise played in the NHL. And Stewart was one of those players, and this is the sweater he wore when he played for the Air Force. I mean, and I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful sweater.
Yeah, it's really well done.
RCAF logo and obviously part of our history.
Yeah, yeah. Now, again, a lot of people don't realize there's not a lot of these around, right?
No.
Because they get thrown out, or they get holes in it. Obviously at the Hockey Hall of Fame, they have temperature-controlled rooms. How do you take care of these things?
There are a number of things that we do, and I do talk to the people at the Hall of Fame about how to try to maintain them. But there are you have to, first of all, do some things to get rid of any parasites that may be on the sweater. So you put them in the freezer for a couple of weeks, you take them out and let them thaw, then you put them back in for a week or so. And you try to keep them in an environment where they're not getting moisture and but not too dry, and make sure there are no moths.
Yeah, that's it for sure, especially with wool. All right, what do we got next, Val? Look at this one.
Well, this is going back to the now I think we're moving on to the Leafs sweaters. This is a sweater that was worn by Harold Duras, who was a player for the Leafs. Now, as I think probably a lot of people know, the Leafs won some Stanley Cups before they were called the Toronto Maple Leafs, after they became the Maple Leafs when Conn Smythe bought them in 27. But they won as the St. Pat's and as the Arenas. But the first one that they won for the Leafs in 31-32, I believe, this was the sweater worn by Harold Duras. And I don't know if there are any other sweaters that exist from that Toronto Maple Leafs first Stanley Cup team. I've never seen any. I don't believe there are. And, Carrie, you talked earlier about how we collectors try to match certain things. One of the things that you'll notice on this sweater is how that crest, which I love, with the Toronto facing upward, I think it's just a beautiful crest. These crests are hand cut. So they're in the old days, they're really, really quite easy to match from the photos, even though the photos aren't incredibly clear. Because the crests are hand cut, even those letters are hand cut and then sewn on. So these crests are unique. And then the other thing that we were clearly able to match for this sweater, and Val, if you could just zoom out for just a second, a little bit, is you'll notice that the crest is a little bit off center. It's slightly to the left on your screen. It doesn't go quite to the middle of the collar. And in the team photo of the team when they won the Stanley Cup in 32, they're wearing these sweaters, and you can clearly see Harold Duras' sweater, and you can match the crest, and you can see that it points slightly over to the left, and it's not centered like it's supposed to be and like the other crests are.
And I've had the advantage to come over and see your collection, and you actually show me that.
Yeah.
And I find that absolutely fascinating. You'd look for a little maybe as I think Kevin said, a little blood spot. And, then you can authenticize what the jersey is and who it was owned by. And if it was actually worn in that particular game that somebody is trying to sell it to.
It's really fun. That's part of the fun of collecting, is trying to match these sweaters. And it's little things that you would never imagine too. For example, I have a Jerome McGinley sweater from the Vancouver Olympics, and I noticed that on the Nike swoosh that's on the top part of the chest on the sweater, there's a thread that's sticking up. I was thinking, well, that's kind of funny that there's a thread that's sticking up. And then you go to his actual photo that he took before the first game of him wearing the sweater, And you can actually, when you close in, you can actually see this thread sticking up at exactly the right spot. It's kind of fun.
Have you ever had anybody try and sell you or state that it is this particular jersey, but you were able to say, "Hey, hang on a sec here. No, it isn't."
Oh, lots of times. And it's not so much that I would say, no, it isn't. I would just say, there's not enough to make me comfortable with it.
Okay, yeah.
I don't want to insult people. And
No, of course, yeah.
And sometimes, that there were strange things that happened. People wore sweaters for one game and with strange crests and different stripes and all sorts of stuff that you might look at it and say, no, this can't be real. But maybe it was. So I'm not going to tell them it's not real.
No, very good.
I'm not comfortable enough to buy it.
Good point. We'll see that in a jersey that's coming up. I'm really excited about you describing it. It's one of the rare Toronto Maple Leaf jerseys. Al, what do we got next? That's it. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So this, of course, fans of the Toronto Maple Leafs know that they were, before the Maple Leafs, they were the St. Pats. And even current fans know that they wear this St. Pat's sweater now as their retro sweater. And the front of the sweater will look really familiar to people who have seen the Maple Leafs play as the St. Pats. The back won't look familiar at all, because the back of the sweater that they wear now, it looks like a couple of squares. So John Tavares, who's number 91, his sweater actually looks like he's number 911 on the back, because there's a line. It looks like there's a line between the 9 and the 1. But the reason why they did that is not that they were trying to be creative or trying to change. It's that there are actually no photos that anyone I ever talked to knows of the back of the St. Pat's sweater. So they just had no idea. There are photos of the front. There are no photos of the back. So they didn't know what the back of the sweater actually looked like, and they just made it up. But this is what the sweater actually looked like when
that would have been cool, if they would have played in that type of jersey, that type of number.
I know, it's very funny, and it's again, it's all hand sewn. You can tell it's hand sewn, and you can see there's a repair on top of the ST of St. Pat's. You can sort of see in the green. The shade isn't quite right. That's actually sewn in. It obviously ripped. And it's been sewn. This is a sweater that could have been a guy by the name of Billy Stewart, who wore number 3 in the year that is this style. There unfortunately aren't photos that are good enough to be able to match to Billy Stewart. I could only find one photo of him from that year. He was supposed to be number 3, but in those days it wasn't that big a deal, and a number of people wore the number throughout the year, and it could have just as easily been worn by somebody else.
Yeah. So in this collection, there
you can see 911.
Yeah.
For John. That's the back of the sweater as the Leafs wear them now, which is of course nothing like the way it was in the original.
No. Sweater. You wonder why they wouldn't copy it exactly, because that is really, really cool.
Well, they didn't copy it because they didn't know what it looked like. There are no photos of it. And as far as I know, this is the only sweater that still exists. All the others were destroyed. So they just didn't know.
All right. So out of all the collection that you have, is there one that you just say, wow, I actually have this jersey?
Lots. I'm afraid this would certainly be one of them. One of them also would really be you talked with Kevin and Paul about Bill Barocco, and you said you were going to do a show on Bill Barocco. Barocco,
there it is.
Sweater number 5 was the first Leaf sweater that ever got retired, that stayed retired. Number 6 for Ace Bailey got retired. Ace asked Ron to wear it when Ron Ellis came to the Leafs, and then it got retired again. But Bill Barocco's number 5 was retired and never worn again. And a lot of people don't know this, but Bill Barocco only wore number 5 for one season. And that was that 50-51 season when he scored the goal flying through the air and won the Stanley Cup when in overtime. And all of the games went to overtime. This sweater, so in those days, the players had one sweater, one white and one blue, that they wore through the entire season, and then they got a new set for the playoffs. This is not the sweater that was worn in the playoffs. This was the sweater that Barocco wore in the regular season, and it's matched clearly. I have number of things that it's matched to prove that it was worn during the regular season. It was not worn in the playoffs, though. That sweater has disappeared. We don't know what happened to it. This sweater would have been worn the year before in the playoffs, but not by Barilko, actually by a different player, Garth Bush, who was number 5 the year before Barilko became number 5. So it would have been worn by Garth Bush in the 50 playoffs, then Barilko in the 50-51 season. And then he had a new one when he scored the goal. And it's funny the way there we go, the famous goal. The way that I obtained this sweater was
a great shot.
But that sweater had actually been at the Hockey Hall of Fame for many years, and at the time everyone thought it was the sweater that he wore when he went flying through the air and scored that goal, because they knew it was from the season, and it was always thought to be that sweater. Then the person who had loaned it was on loan to the Hall of Fame. The person who loaned it to the Hall got into a bitter divorce, and as part of the divorce settlement, he was required to sell all of his memorabilia.
Oh, geez.
His ex-wife. So he pulled the sweater from the Hall and put it up at auction, and they started doing more research on it and figured out, of course, that it was worn during the season, not during the playoffs.
Right.
And I bought it at the auction. What's kind of funny is that I heard that his ex-wife is absolutely convinced that it was the sweater that was worn in the playoffs, and he just said it was worn during the regular season, so it would be worth less, so she would get less money at the end of the day from him. So,
that's crazy.
But that's, of course, not true. It wasn't worn during the playoffs.
Yeah. All right. I know we're getting late in time here, so let's. What do we got? I know there's one that I want to make sure we talk about before we let you go. Let's see. Is there not one that was a blue one with a number 7 on it? There it is. Look at that. Everybody will know this jersey if they drink coffee.
Yeah. This, of course, is Tim Horton's sweater. And Tim played for many, many years for the Leafs, the 50s and the 60s. I know now everyone knows him because of the coffee, but he was, of course, a fantastic Hall of Fame defenseman. Maybe many would say the best defenseman the Leafs ever had. Some would say Salming or perhaps others, but a lot of people think it was Tim Horton. And this particular style is the style that the Leafs went to for the 67 playoffs. This may very well have been the sweater that he wore in the 67 playoffs and the 68 season. It was worn one or the other. It's matched to a game during the 68 season, during that next season. There's a stitching. There's some stitching on one of the numbers on the sleeves, and I've matched that to a photo from the 68 season. I don't know what. There's nothing really to match to the 67 playoffs, but it may very well have been worn during that last Leaf Stanley Cup.
That is absolutely amazing. Golly, I can just vision him right now. I saw a bunch of pictures actually at Tim Hortons, and they've got one in there. That one there. Look at that.
There we go.
Incredible.
That's great.
Incredible. Well, I know we've run a little bit over time. Tony has her show coming up called Tonic. They talk about, today's all about Father's Day. On obviously this Sunday, I want to wish you a tremendously fantastic Father's Day, Allan. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. It's always it's uplifting. And I look forward to when we do get out of this pandemic and we get the chance to, I always say, when we get a chance to get out of jail and collect our $200 for passing go, I'm going to buy you lunch.
All right. Sounds great, Gouche. Look forward to seeing you. Thanks for having me on.
You know what? If you don't mind, I think we could do this again, because there's some jerseys that I was expecting to see, I didn't see. And you know, it'd be great to go through some of the recent Olympics. I know you've got some really special jerseys there that I think a lot of people would be very interested in seeing. So, you know, in a couple of weeks, we'll do this again.
Sounds great. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Thank you so much for what you do for hockey.
Thank you. Talk to you later.
Incredible. Well, listen, I'll tell you what, we're a little delayed for Tonic, but that was well worth it. Not only my good friend Allan Stitt, but to have Kevin and Paul do what they do for hockey. I know the people that have stayed on watching us. I'll tell you what an honor to know these guys, but more importantly, to continue on the legacy of a game that we all love. Once you play it, you fall in love with it, you make sure that you continue on being a part of the great game. And we are so lucky to have it. And I thank you all for the great compliments. And don't forget, next week, we will be back. You know what? I may even convince Allan to come back next week if he's not busy right after the hockey history. It lines right up with it. So next Thursday, I will ask Allan to come on and show us more of his. Because you know what? These jerseys, you're not going to be able to go to the Hockey Hall of Fame and see. You can only see them live at Gouche Live. Or, of course, if you know Allan, you get a chance to go see him at his office. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Val, an incredible job, as usual, pulling up the reference to videos and, of course, the pictures. Thanks, Val, for that. We're off to Tonic. Thanks a lot for being here. You're watching Gouche Live featuring Paul Rosen. Paul will be back with us tomorrow, and we'll have an exciting show. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Let's play some hockey.